Okay, so picture this. You're sitting in a dealership, the salesman slides a piece of paper across the desk, and you're looking at a brand new SUV. Leather seats, panoramic sunroof, the whole thing. And he goes, "Great news, we can get you into this for just $749 a month." And something in your brain goes, "Yeah, that sounds doable. You make decent money. You can handle 749 bucks. That's like, what, $25 a day? Less than $1 an hour." And you sign. And then 6 months later, you're eating sandwiches for lunch every day, wondering why you feel completely broke even though you got a raise last year. If that's you, or if you've been tempted by that version of you, stay right here. Because today we're talking about why an entire generation somehow dodged this trap and what the rest of us desperately need to learn from them. My name is Rayhan, and I spend way too much time thinking about why certain generations handle money completely differently than others. If you're someone who feels like you're earning more than ever, but somehow have less and less to show for it at the end of the month, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. It genuinely helps the channel more than you know. All right, let's get into it. So here's the thing. The $700 car payment is not some edge case. It's not the guy who went out and bought a Porsche on a whim. This is now normal. According to Edmunds, the average monthly car payment in the United States hit $738 for a new vehicle in 2023. $738. The average, which means there are people out there, a lot of people, paying $900, $1,000, $1,100 a month for a car. And look, I want to be clear. I'm not here to shame anyone, but I do want you to understand the full picture of what that number actually means, because I think most people who sign those contracts genuinely don't. Let's do the math, because this is where it starts to get uncomfortable. $738 a month. Over a standard 72-month loan, which is now the most common loan term for new vehicles, by the way, 6 years, you're paying $53,136 total for a car that by the time you pay it off has lost somewhere between 50 and 60% of its value. But wait, that $53,136 doesn't include insurance. A new vehicle, especially an SUV or a truck, is going to run you at least $150 to $200 a month in full coverage insurance. Let's call it $175. That's another $12,600 over 6 years. Then there's maintenance. Oil changes, tires, brakes. Let's be conservative. $1,200 a year. That's $7,200 over the loan term. We're now at $73,000. $73,000 for a car. And here's what most people don't realize. If instead you had taken even half that monthly payment and invested it in a basic index fund averaging 8% annual returns, after 6 years, you'd have nearly $22,000 sitting in an account, doing nothing but growing. But we'll come back to that. Now you might be thinking, okay, Rayhan, what does any of this have to do with Gen X? What's so special about them? And this is where it gets really interesting. Gen X, that's roughly people born between 1965 and 1980, they came of age financially in a very specific economic environment that accidentally gave them a superpower most of us don't have. Think about when Gen X was in their 20s and 30s. We're talking the late 80s, the 90s. Interest rates had just come down from the insane levels of the early 80s when the Fed funds rate hit 20%. 20%. Gen X watched their parents struggle with that. They saw what debt at high interest rates could do to a family. They saw it up close and personal. Then they hit their prime earning years during the dot-com boom and then watched it collapse. They bought houses in the early 2000s and then lived through 2008. By the time the financial crisis hit, the average Gen Xer had already been financially punched in the face twice. And you know what repeated financial trauma does? It makes you deeply, almost irrationally skeptical of monthly payments. There's actually fascinating research from Pew and from various behavioral economists showing that people who experience economic downturns during their formative years, their late teens and 20s, develop fundamentally different risk tolerances. They're not just more careful, they psychologically cannot see monthly payments the same way younger generations do. When a Gen Xer looks at a $700 car payment, their brain doesn't calculate, can I afford this per month? Their brain calculates, how much is this actually costing me, and what happens if I lose my job? That second question, that one question, is everything. Look, I want to be fair here. The monthly payment trap isn't a character flaw, it's not stupidity, it is a very deliberate psychological exploit, and the auto industry has spent billions of dollars perfecting it.
Here's how it works. Our brains are genuinely bad at processing large numbers. If I tell you a car costs $45,000, your brain registers that as a big number. You feel the weight of it. You get hesitant. Maybe you think, I don't know, that's a lot. But if I tell you it's $739 a month, your brain immediately starts comparing that to other monthly expenses, your rent, your groceries, and suddenly $739 feels manageable, like a category of expense rather than a massive financial commitment. This is called payment decoupling, and it is one of the most studied phenomena in consumer psychology. When you separate the price of something from its actual total cost, people consistently overestimate what they can afford and underestimate the total burden. And the auto industry didn't just discover this, they built an entire business model around it. Think about how car ads work. Do they ever lead with the total price? Never. It's always for just X dollars a month. They're not selling you a car, they're selling you a monthly number small enough to feel harmless. Here's a concrete example. Let's say you're shopping for a car and you have a $500 a month budget in your head. A few years ago, $500 a month might have gotten you a $25,000 car on a 60-month loan. Today, with higher interest rates, we're talking 7–8% for many buyers, that same $500 a month gets you maybe a $24,000 car. But the dealerships figured something out. If they just stretch the loan to 84 months, 7 years, they can get you into a $35,000 car for the same payment. And guess what most people do? They take the $35,000 car, because in their head, they're thinking about the monthly number, not the total, not the interest, not the fact that they will be paying for this car for 7 years and it'll be worth maybe $12,000 by the time they're done. So now let's talk about what Gen X actually did, because it wasn't magic, it wasn't luck, it was a very specific set of mental frameworks that we can all adopt. Framework number 1, total cost thinking. This sounds simple, but it is almost countercultural in today's environment. Before Gen X made a major purchase, they asked one question first, not can I afford the payment, but what is this going to cost me total, and is that worth it? For a car, that means adding up the purchase price, the total interest over the loan, insurance over the ownership period, maintenance, and the opportunity cost of that money not being invested. When you run that full calculation, a $45,000 car doesn't cost $45,000. It costs you somewhere between $70,000 and $85,000 when all is said and done. Now, is a car worth $75,000 of your lifetime wealth? Maybe. If it's your business vehicle, if you're driving 40,000 miles a year, maybe. But for most people buying a new SUV to commute 12 miles to an office, probably not. Framework number 2, the 1-year rule for large purchases. A lot of Gen Xers, and this is something I've heard repeatedly from people in that generation when you actually ask them about their money habits, they had an informal rule. If it's a major purchase, sleep on it. Not overnight, for weeks, sometimes months. This is not because they were indecisive, it's because they understood something behavioral economists confirmed much later. The emotional excitement of a new purchase fades, but the financial obligation doesn't. Giving yourself time lets the excitement die down so you can evaluate the decision with a clear head. If you're still excited about the car 6 weeks later and you've run the full numbers and it still makes sense, okay, maybe you move forward. But most impulse financial decisions don't survive 6 weeks of calm reflection. Framework number 3, distinguish between price and cost. Here's the thing. Price is what you pay at the register or what the monthly statement says. Cost is what it takes from your life, your time, your options, your security. Gen X understood, often because they'd felt it, that a car payment doesn't just cost you money, it costs you flexibility. It costs you the ability to take a risk, to start a business, to take a job that pays less but gives you a better future, to weather an emergency without going into a panic spiral. When you have a $700 car payment, you're not just paying $700. You are locked in. Your financial life has to work around that obligation every single month for the next 6 or 7 years. That's a cage made of leather seats and a heated steering wheel. Now, look, I have to be honest here, because some of you are already typing in the comments, Rihan, it was easier for Gen X, houses were cheaper, college was cheaper, and you're right, I'm not going to pretend the economic environment is the same. But here's what I want to push back on. The car thing is not about housing costs. The average Gen Xer wasn't driving a luxury vehicle in their 30s and 40s either. In fact, the average vehicle transaction price in 1995, adjusted for inflation, was about $22,000 in today's dollars. Today, the average new car transaction price is around $48,000. It has more than doubled in real terms. Why? Because every time interest rates dropped and loan terms stretched, automakers raised prices. They didn't have to compete on total cost because the consumer was focused on the monthly payment. The monthly payment stayed relatively stable while the actual price of the vehicle exploded. We got played. The whole market got played.
And here's what really gets me. The people most affected by this are young people who are already dealing with student loans, already dealing with high rents, and they're adding a $700 car payment on top of it. According to a 2023 Bankrate survey, nearly 25% of car owners say their monthly payment is a financial hardship, 1 in 4. And they're still paying for it, because what's the alternative? Give the car back and ruin your credit? That's the trap. Once you're in it, getting out is painful, which is exactly why the lesson from Gen X matters so much before you sign. This is where it gets really interesting, and this is the part I want you to sit with. The $700 car payment isn't just expensive. It is dollar for dollar one of the most destructive things a middle-income earner can do to their long-term wealth. And most people have no idea because the damage is invisible until it's too late. Let me show you two people. Same income, same age, 28 years old. Let's call them Alex and Jordan. Alex buys a new car, $45,000 financed at 7.5% over 72 months. Payment comes out to about $780 a month. Alex does this again at 34, new car, similar situation, and again at 40. Jordan buys a reliable used car for $14,000 cash, save up. At 34, buys another used car for $16,000 cash, same at 40. The difference in monthly outflow versus Alex? Roughly $600 a month that Jordan doesn't spend on car payments. Jordan invests that $600 a month into an index fund starting at age 28 at an average annual return of 8%. By age 65, Jordan has an additional $1.1 million. $1.1 million from choosing slightly less glamorous cars. I want you to actually feel that number for a second, because we're not talking about some extreme sacrifice. Jordan still drives a car, Jordan still gets to work and takes road trips and all of it. Jordan just doesn't drive a brand new car with a payment. And the difference is $1 million. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but Jordan had to have the cash up front. And that's true, and I hear you. But here's the thing. If you currently have a car payment, your path forward is not keep this payment forever. Your path forward is to aggressively pay it off, sell the car or keep it longer, and redirect that cash flow. It's not instant, but the direction matters enormously. Okay, so what do you actually do with this information? Because I don't want this to just be 15 minutes of making you feel bad about your car. I want to give you something actionable. Step 1. Calculate your current total vehicle cost. Right now, today, open a spreadsheet or just grab a piece of paper, add up your monthly payment times months remaining, add the insurance you're paying, add your annual maintenance estimate times the years remaining. That's your total cost of ownership. Most people have never done this exercise. It's uncomfortable. Do it anyway. Step 2. Set a simple car budget rule. A rule of thumb that a lot of financial planners use and that Gen X intuitively practiced is that your total annual vehicle costs should not exceed 15% of your gross annual income. That includes payment, insurance, gas, and maintenance. If you make $60,000 a year, that's $9,000 a year, or $750 a month for everything car-related, not just the payment, everything. Run your current number. Be honest with yourself. Step 3. When your current car is paid off, do not upgrade. This is the single most important rule. When the payments end, a massive amount of people immediately go get a new car and start the cycle over. Instead, keep driving the paid-off car. It's already reliable. Put the old payment amount into investments every single month. Do that for 2 years, and you've built a serious chunk of cash that changes your options forever. Step 4. When you do buy a car, buy used and pay cash if at all possible. A 2 to 3-year-old vehicle has already taken the worst of the depreciation hit, typically 30 to 40% of value, but it's still almost entirely reliable. You get most of the car for significantly less money, and you don't have the payment hanging over you. I know this feels impossible if you're in a payment right now. I'm not saying it happens overnight. I'm saying it's the target. Build toward it. Look, here's what I actually think the Gen X story is about. It's not that they were smarter, it's not that they were better with money by nature. It's that their experiences forced them to ask a question that our culture, our ads, our social media, our treat yourself messaging actively discourages us from asking. The question is, what is this actually going to cost me? Not per month, total, in real dollars, in flexibility, in years of work, in the version of your future self who either has options or doesn't. A car is a tool. It gets you from point A to point B. It doesn't define you. It doesn't make your life better in any meaningful, lasting way. But the wealth you build, the options you create by refusing to be emotionally manipulated into overpaying for a depreciating asset, that changes everything. The dealership is not your friend. The 84-month loan is not a favor. The $749 is not a deal. It's a very well-engineered system designed to extract maximum money from you while making you feel like you're getting something. Gen X, a lot of them, figured that out. Sometimes the hard way, sometimes because they watched their parents, sometimes because the economic environment gave them no choice. You have a choice. Right now, before the next signature, before the next trade-in. Run the full math. Think about total costs. Protect your future options. That's it. That's the whole thing. If this video helped you think differently about your car situation or money in general, please hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps more people find this content, and that's the whole reason I make it. I'll see you in the next one.